What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a top 10 songs of Phil Elverum, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Osmond. Thank you, Osmond. I always appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons and everything they bring. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. The patrons make this thing go. We put up material every single day, and it takes a lot of man hours to do that, so thank you. I don't know a lot about Phil, know a little bit about him. I'm going to take you through just a little bit of his background, not much, and then we're going to get into the songs. Phil's an American musician, songwriter, record producer, and visual artist, best known for his musical projects, The Microphones and Mount Eerie, based in Anacortes, Washington. His musical influences include Eric's Trip, Will Oldham, Bjork, Nirvana, Tori Amos, The Cranberries, Sinead O'Connor, Red House Painters, Sonic Youth, This Mortal Coil, and Stereo Lab. Both Eric's Trip and Stereo Lab in particular were important, and that's quite the diverse influence. Osmond says this time the list is chronological, not necessarily his preferred order, so keep that in mind. I've got some research for every single song, kind of take you through because it's chronological. It made it easy for me to do the research and present it to you in a way where we can see Phil go from project to project and go through some pretty serious life events and how those shape him. So music's not going to be in the video. Check out the Vimeo link below. You can follow along with us. Thanks again, Osmond. Well, we're going to start off at number 10 with The Pull. It's from The Microphones and the album It Was Hot, We Stayed in the Water in 2000. Their second album. They ended up having 5 albums. The Microphones are an American indie folk, indie rock, and experimental project from Olympia, Washington. It was founded in 1996, ended in 2003 with a short reunion following in 2007 and revivals in 2019 and 2020. Every iteration of The Microphones has been fronted by Phil. It's his deal. He's the principal songwriter and producer behind the band's albums. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Let's get after it. The Pull from The Microphones. I can see why Osmond likes this. He's a big Sufjan Stevens fan. I think there's some Sufjan influence in here. I mean, I realized it was before Sufjan was making, but they sound very similar. Got a lot of Sufjan stuff up on the channel. If you like him, do a search after this video. Osmond brought almost all of it that we got up on the channel. This song was okay for me. I liked at the 3:03 mark, it kind of kicked into this instrumental, right? The drums come in and some different stuff comes in, kind of finishes us out through the rest of the song. And I actually, the acoustic work was really good. Phil's voice, I can sometimes be hot and cold. Not that I've heard much of him. And I think in a song where it's just the acoustic like this, it's a little rough for me, but I mean, it's not horrible, but it's a little rough for me. Songwriting's really good, which I kind of expect to be a theme throughout here, that he's an excellent songwriter. It's an end of a relationship, right? And so he's showing that in the fact that he becomes mist and he kind of comes out of his body and is observing from afar. So that's what this song is about. Like, Verse 3, from high above you, I saw your earthling body wrapped in wool. The glow surrounds you. And when I breathed in, I felt the pull to be back with her. So very clever way, good songwriting. Not a bad song. Our next song is I Felt Your Shape, also from The Microphones, from the album The Glow Part 2 in 2001. This album takes influences from numerous genres such as black metal, ambient, and avant-garde, as well as non-musical sources like the American drama television show Twin Peaks and Phil's relationship to Kayla Marichich. He was responsible for the album's production in its entirety. He hoped to achieve a more organic sound by recording it on a 16-track analog tape. He would generally record the songs early in the morning alone. He created the distortion on the album via, quote, running the guitar through the mic input on a thrift store cassette deck, then out the headphone jack into the amp. This song, Phil said about this song, it's basically about hugging, the difference between hugging someone and grabbing them and squeezing them and not letting them go, or hugging them in a lighter way where you're feeling their shape. Not in a desperate grabbing way, but in a way that's sensitive or something. All right, Phil. So with that description, I would imagine it's going to be quite different than the first track we listened to. Well, that's what I get for assuming, right? Basically the same thing acoustic with Phil's voice. Maybe I'm getting used to Phil's voice more because I didn't mind that at all. Very well written song. Once again, he writes in a little bit of a layered, the last one, The Love is a Mist that he lost, and this one, feeling her shape. He's using that as a metaphor for actually feeling her emotions and actually seeing her and understanding what's going on with her. So that's kind of what he does here. On your birthday in the kitchen, my grip was loose, my eyes were open. I felt your shape and heard your breathing. I felt the rise and fall of your chest. And then he goes, and I felt your fall, your winter snows, your gusty blow, your lava flow. I felt it all. So he's starting to see the pain that this person's in. So Really well written. Fantastic job on that one. Now our next selection is from that same album. It's the title track, The Glow, Part 2 from the same album, The Glow, in 2001. Phil says, I was more dramatic back then. I faced death is kind of a ridiculous line considering that I was talking about having my feelings hurt. The idea with the song is that sometimes it is annoying to have to admit to yourself that you're still alive when you'd rather curl up in a ball and be sad and dark. Being annoyed at your heart for still beating. Not that I was actually suicidal or anything. I totally wasn't. Just a regular old relationship not working out. No big whoop. It features the line, my blood flows harshly, which he holds for 14 seconds. So let's get this. The Glow Part 2. Great coda indiness out there, and also a nice build up on the intro. The song itself, another one that is really well written. He's just talking about being basically vulnerable, right? That I took off my shirt in the yard. No one saw that the skin on my shoulders was golden. No, it's not. My shirt's back on. I forgot my songs. The glow is gone. My gliding body stopped. So this relationship has broke down, and now he's forgot his songs, because if you've ever been in a serious relationship and it didn't work out right, it's devastating. And kind of everything else around you really don't care about in the moment. It just kind of, everything is, it comes crashing down. And that's kind of what he meant by the quote when he's talking about when to curl up in a ball too. I could not get through September without a battle. I faced death. I went in with my arms swinging, but I heard my own breath, and I had to face that I'm still living. I'm still flesh. I hold on to awful feelings. I'm not dead. There's no end. My face is red, my blood flows harshly, my heart beats loudly, my chest still draws breath, I hold it, I'm buoyant, oh, there's no end. That's the whole song. But the way he does it, he's telling you, if you ever spent time where you don't have music on TV and you're just laying there and you just want to, or sitting there, and in your thoughts, you start to become highly aware of that. My heart's beating, my blood's flowing, I can feel all of it in the silence, right? It's supposed to depict the silence of and the loneliness of not being in that relationship anymore. Now we're up to our 7th track, Woolly Mammoth's Absence. This one, it's in some different places, but this one, we're taking it from Mount Eerie. 7 new songs in 2004, the debut EP for Mount Eerie. So we've moved on from the microphones. Mount Eerie is a musical project of Phil's. He's the principal member of the band, but has collaborated with many other musicians on his records and in live performances. Most of Mount Eerie's releases have been issued on his label PW Elverum and Son Limited, and feature highly detailed packaging with his own artwork. Several songs from the EP have later appeared on other Mount Eerie releases in different versions. This one was re-recorded for Dawn, which was an album that was put out in 2008, and we'll get to that album in a little bit, but this is the EP version. Woolly Mammoth's Absence. This song was written when Phil was spending time alone in Norway, where Osmond lives, in 2002 and 2003, and said he basically did nothing and kind of was able to get away from everything. And I think that's what this song's about. He's able to get away from everything, find peace. He even talks about when the sun goes down, now he can really see, things are illuminated. Like he just has peace, right? Because he doesn't have all these distractions. And he's hoping that when he goes back to real life that he can keep this peace. So he says in verse 3, I know day is dawning now, so ends my holy night. It's back to the world I go, back to the girls and shows and other worldly woes and their unfurling flows. Will I carry myself slowly enough to remember? I sit on a dark rock doing nothing still, just crowded. And there's the love in flesh and bone. So I thought that was just a really, really well written verse and a really well written song. And you get the title in verse 2. In the great void of my life, I could feel the shape of what was missing. Like the way the woolly mammoth stands so tall and bold in our minds. I was shaken at the size of my cry and the true love it described. The woolly mammoth was supposedly this obviously mammoth creature, and that is where his despair is, right? That's a great way to visualize that. So another well-written song. Now we're up to the 6th track, I Say No, which is from that Mount Eerie Dawn album that I referenced in the last song in 2008. The songs were all written by Phil during the winter of 2002 and 2003, so he's bringing them up all the way here in 2008, which he spent alone in a cabin in a remote part of Norway. The trip was inspired by a recent breakup and Phil's growing disillusionment with the Bush administration. That would be W, the sun. Let's go. I Say No. There's not 35 seconds more of this song left if you're looking below. I listened to the rest of it. It's all silent. Now, they say at the very end, when he says, it says, if you listen closely, you can hear a static sound. Can also be described as a ringing. That's most likely what he's referring to at the end of the song, but I couldn't hear it, so I'm not going to leave it on here. But this song's much darker, right? Some people say, arise, 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 live, friend, live. I say die. I say shade yourself. I say shine what precious light you have into caves, and when it dies out, stay in there. I say find life where you foolishly saw a grave. Some people say to try and try and try, fight and save yourself. I say give. I say send them off. I say shed whatever husk if you are ripe, and if you're not, be fragrant then. I say give no matter how it hurts, give in. Some people say the sky, the sky, the sky. Have you noticed it? I close my eyes. I say nothing now. And then you know, there's a ring in my ears that's faint and high. And when I listen to it closely, it says, and they say there's static sound that you can hear in there. I don't know, man, this song's fine. I mean, his acoustic guitar works fantastic on all of this stuff, man. I mean, I don't really know what this song's about. I mean, it's obviously a little on the negative side, but there might be some sort of brighter thing he's trying to bring out of it, but I don't see it. But I haven't even brought it up because it's too complicated to connect stuff. But a lot of these songs reference either other songs on albums or other songs on other albums that he's done. I'm just not trying to connect the dots because that would just get way too confusing, guys, for everybody if we're not familiar with that material. So just kind of leave it there. So this might fit in the narrative, overall narrative of the album. All right, now we're in the top half of the list. Remember, it's chronological, not by Osmond's preference, but we got Wind's Dark Poem from Mount Eerie, Wind's Poem in 2009, so just the next year after that last song. While making the album, Phil wished to move away from his usual style, create an album about violent changes. He intended for it to be the loudest record he had made at the time, but also to feature significant emotion. He cites black metal as an influence for the album. At certain points on the record, he attempts to replicate Astor's Subliminal Genocide, a hill he used to live on, and the 1990s American drama, again, Twin Peaks, were also influential. Despite music publications such as Pitchfork labeling the album black metal, Phil has denounced the genre tag, claiming, quote, it's definitely not a black metal album. The whole idea of doing kind of a kitschy genre album is so embarrassing and shallow. He recorded the album via adding various layers to the compositions. The vocals were intentionally mixed low to encourage listeners to turn the volume up, causing the album to, quote, wrap around the listener like a dream. So I have a little more on this that I'm going to wait and talk to you about after the song's over with. I have a feeling we're not going to be able to hear the vocals real well from what I know about this song in the research. Little shoegaze, little My Bloody Valentine's, that sort of stuff. Mixing it deep so it forces you to listen, but let's find out. I was wrong earlier on my assumption. Okay, so I'll talk about this song a little more, what I had. It's the first song on the album. Obviously features that opening, almost a black metal style opening. Consists of blast beats, layered synths, and distorted guitars. Phil wished for the album to, quote, start at 100% volume, all noise at once, and then back off into song a little. He described the lyrics as a collection of images and ideas, so you don't really have to break down the lyrics. It came out of me at the very beginning of the writing of this album that were kind of the seeds that the rest of the songs came from. He sings in almost a speaking manner in this song, akin to reading a poem. That's where you get the poem. Phil described the song as, quote, a table of contents, a bunch of noise and ideas that are a preview for what's to come. Track 0 before track 1. I think it's important you get that because it fits in the scope of the album. I'm not feeling this song. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not feeling this song at all. But if you listen to the album as a whole, I'm sure it works well. And then maybe it becomes the best song on the album. But on first listen, it's kind of a tough one. I mean, it's fine. I appreciate the instrumentation, the artistic license that he's taken, what he's trying to do. It didn't really do much for me. But like I said, when you understand it in the context of the art of the album, it probably works quite well. All right, we got 4 tracks left. We go with House Shape from Mount Eerie Clear Moon in 2012, so 3 years after the previous song. Musically, Clear Moon sees Phil depart from the distortion-heavy sound of his previous studio album, the one we just listened to, Wind's Poem, in favor of a hypnotic guitar and synthesizer-based sound. The album was recorded on analog equipment from October 3rd, 2010 to January 7th, 2012. So a long window in there. It's recorded in Washington at his studio, which is called The Unknown. He described the recording process as, quote, spending days and days effing around and trying things, moving it a little bit, accidentally leaving the mic on and hearing the tape rewinding through the speaker, echoing through the room, recording that sound onto another piece of tape, pitching it down, putting it with this other thing, spending 2 days pursuing this weird possibility only to realize it sucks. Narratively, it expands on the first story first introduced in the final microphone studio album at the time, Mount Eerie is what that album was called, and sees him transverse the ocean and undergo a metaphorical rebirth. Phil described the album as, quote, a resonant lone bell symbol, the glint in the water, the sudden breath, and as an abstract, non-narrative diary exploring his mental state. This song features a pump organ, detuned acoustic guitars, strings, keyboards, drums, and elements of shoegaze. I'm telling you, man, when you understand the kind of work Phil's putting into this stuff by himself, you got to respect the art, man. House Shape, interesting song arrangement-wise. There's a lot of different stuff going on in the beginning. Then he comes in and he's singing over that, and you can't hardly hear him. And then it switches, and his vocals become more prominent. I mean, the idea of the story is just he's holed up in his house, and I think it shows you not only that it's symbolic of the fact that he's depressed. And finally, at the end, he goes outside because he's out of a wood. So the fireplace has been dead since last night. So there's no light, basically, and no warmth. And it's raining and all of those things, and just goes through these different things. Look at cars go by and then get forgotten. Only a sound of a waterfall breathing out of one long exhale rings in my ears for a moment. Then another wave of rain blows over, graying out the light. But at the very end, in blue dusk, I finally step outside, breathing in the cloud that has settled, noticing a black looming house shape, and at last my eyes crack open. So I think he may be in a depression, and now he's starting to come out of it, but he's really good. He writes a lot like, I mean, I'm not going to say, I don't compare anybody to Dylan, but sometimes Dylan's stuff is very veiled. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it's very veiled. And that's kind of the way Phil writes here. He kind of disguises a lot of things, and you kind of have to pull out the meaning, which is always a fun exercise. Now we go to the only song I'd ever heard of from Mount Eerie. We actually have a song reaction up to this song, and this song is one of the most powerful songs I've ever heard. Real Death from Mount Eerie, A Crow Looked at Me in 2017. It was composed in the aftermath of his 35-year-old wife, Genevieve Castri's diagnosis with pancreatic cancer in 2015 and her death in July of 2016. He wrote and recorded the songs over a 6-week period in the room where she died, mostly using her instruments. Characterized by lo-fi production and loose instrumentation, the lyrics are presented in a diary-like form and sung in a raw, intimate style. They describe Genevieve's illness and death, Phil's grief, and his relationship with their infant child. It's his best-selling record to date and is considered his most important work. It became one of the most praised albums of 2017, appearing on many best-of lists for the year and decade. His following albums, Now Only in 2018 and Lost Wisdom Part 2 in 2019, further detail and examine her illness and early death. Don't worry, we're about to get to those. And Real Death, the song itself, describes Phil's shock in the weeks after her death. He sings accompanied by piano, electric guitar, accordion, and drums. The opening words, "Death is real," appear throughout the record, so there's that overlying theme. This one's tough if you've got, for me, I've got a wife of 27 years, and it's just a tough one to listen to, man. Let's do it. Real Death. This song is just absolutely gut-wrenching, man. It's just so gut-wrenching. It's so good. It's so powerful, man. And like I said, if you've been with somebody for a long time, it's freaking hits you hard. Death is real. Someone's there, and then they're not. And it's not for singing about. It's not for making into art. When real death enters the house, all poetry is dumb. When I walk into the room where you were and look into the emptiness instead, all fails. My knees fail. My brain fails. Words fail. Crusted with tears, catatonic and raw, I go downstairs, and outside, you still get mail. A week after you died, a package with your name on it came, and inside was a gift for our daughter you had ordered in secret, and collapsed there on the front steps. I wailed. I just put myself in this position. My goodness, man. A backpack for when she goes to school a couple years from now. You were thinking ahead to a future you must have known deep down would not include you. Though you clawed at the cliff you were sliding down. So she fought it, man, being swallowed into a silence that's bottomless and real. It's dumb, and I don't want to learn anything from this. I love you. It's dumb, and I don't want to learn anything from this. He said later on in an interview, that line is more just like hating it all so much that I felt like it's kind of adolescent to be like, I don't want to learn this lesson. Even though I know there's a lesson happening to me, I just didn't want to even participate. I don't know exactly what it is that I've learned. I think it's an ongoing evolution all the time. This has been a big shift. I think maybe the big one is when I listen to my older songs, there are all these ambiguous metaphors, as we've talked about on here. That's how it all seems to me. It's me trying to make sense of some concept that I thought of, and I'm like, I'm going to explain this concept. It's just numbing. Talking about taking out the garbage is somehow so much more powerful to me now. I don't have anything else to say about this song. There needs to be nothing in here much, but just his voice, and that's kind of what everything else is mixed to the back. It yanks you in from the second it starts. It's 2 minutes and 27 seconds. I don't know if I could take any longer of a song on it, just because it's just so powerful. It's emotional, man. So good. We got 2 songs left. We got Tintin in Tibet from Mount Eerie, Now Only in 2018, so the next year after the previous song. It's a concept album in the aftermath of his death of his wife. The album was entirely written and produced by Phil and recorded in the room in which she died. So he's just carrying on, man. The album departs from the one we just listened to, A Crow Looked at Me's raw and intimate style of writing, intending instead to answer grander and more introspective question about Phil's life after her death. Lyrically, the album focuses on themes of the aftermath of death and the lingering ghostly presence of the deceased. It continues the use of direct lyricism and nearly spoken delivery first seen in that previous album. According to him, Now Only is part 2 to A Crow Looked at Me. After releasing A Crow Looked at Me in 2017, he decided he did not want to play any of his older songs because they seemed irrelevant, and so continued to write in order to have enough material to go on tour. He wrote the album on pieces of paper left over from Genevieve, noting that their sentimental quality. The writing process took place almost immediately after that last album, A Crow Looked at Me. Moving on from the raw catharsis of the previous album, Phil approached the writing of Now Only from an introspective perspective, attempting to answer the question of how Genevieve exists in his life post-death. He described this as, quote, the thesis of the record, the question I'm poking at. This song itself refers to Tintin in Tibet, the 20th volume of the comic series The Adventures of Tintin by Belgian cartoonist Herge. The song details his memories of her before her illness. All right, I know it's a lot, but man, you got to set the stage. Tintin in Tibet, another powerful one. I mean, you've got 5 verses and an outro in here. So he's singing to his deceased wife and just kind of talking about how he goes outside and repeating I love you to who. I record all these songs about the echoes in our house now and then walked out the door to play them on a stage. But I sing to you. I'm still singing them to you. And he talks about when they first met when they were 22 and some adventures that they had. And they went to this island and lying up, verse 4, lying on the rocks, waiting for the boat to come pick us up. I read the one book we had with us aloud with my head on your lap, sinking into you, Tintin in Tibet in French. And we thought of devotion and snow and distant longing in the Himalayan air, high and cold with a bell ringing out. Then the next verse. Then right before you died, 13 years later in our house, I remember through your gasping for oxygen, you explained you were thinking about that high cold air, wrapping the globe, singing above the mountains of the gods. Man. And the outro, and I do picture you there, molecules dancing, but I'd rather you were in the house watching the unfolding everyday life of this good daughter we made, instead of being scattered by the wind for no reason. So I sing to you. Man, I mean, unbelievably powerful again. That goes without saying, but wow. And now we're going to finish this off with the last song. Remember, I'll just remind you one more time, this isn't necessarily Osmond's number one song. They're chronological. Belief Part 2 from Mount Eerie and Julie Doran from Lost Wisdom Part 2 in 2019. It's a second collaborative studio album by Mount Eerie and Julie Doran. Like the previous 2 Mount Eerie albums, it concerns the death of his first wife, as well as his recent divorce from Michelle Williams. The album is a sequel to the 2008 collaborative album Lost Wisdom, so that's why Lost Wisdom Part 2, 11 years later. In 2018, he married actress Michelle Williams. Around the same time, he moved from his longtime residence in Washington to Williams' home in Brooklyn. They separated in January of 2019 and filed for divorce in April of 2019. Following the split, he moved back to Washington State. He only lived in New York for about 9 months. Due to him recording the album with the door wide open, natural sounds such as breaths, birds, jackhammering, and night air are featured throughout the album. The majority of the album was written in the space of the 3 weeks before recording. When it came to the writing of the album, Phil was quoted as saying, I hope to write songs about the smoldering foundation beneath all of this surface chaos. A love that doesn't die. Songs beyond mere sorrow. If I again minded the circumstances of my life for these words, I tried to do it with liberation in mind for everyone. I tried to make songs that did not rely at all on who I am or who I am singing about. Okay, that's an interesting intro. Let's do it. Belief Part 2, another powerful song. I think with Julie just singing the whole thing in unison with him, in harmony with him, I think it adds something to the song for sure. And this one, he's more lamenting his loss of his marriage to Michelle Williams, who I was reading here, they were married for just 9 months. They got married in secret, and the devastation of that. And I read that in another song here, he really covers it about, she came in an angelic way and they were so in love. But verse 1, I believed in love and I still do. I'm not going to seal up my heart. I still do. I believed in love and in you. Now walled away, I know it's in you. I love you. I love you. There's an ocean away that awaits us, spreading out on all sides. We could swim. We could dissolve there. I love you. I love you. If ever the bonfire that I carry around could warm you again, I will be out here in the weather for you glowing. So I still love you, in other words. I believe, and now I walk to the edge of delusion. Divorced and estranged, staying back with my parents. I read Phil had to move back in with his parents. I believe, though, because I know who you are and the world we could share, that we lived in for a moment, still lies fertile in the dark. I go there alone there. I can only offer my love. Then the chorus again, I love you, but the second line, I release you. So it's evolving. And then the outro, at the edge of this ocean, I stand and pour out the glass of water I brought. There's nothing else I can give but love. So symbolic with the water. Michelle's still alive. He's covered in other songs where he poured out the ashes of his first wife into the ocean. So a really good way to end this off. I know it's chronological, but those last 3 songs obviously fit quite well in the evolution of Phil. Now we get to my favorite tracks. I know I went in a little bit on a couple songs. Guys, I'm always honest, man. I'm not going to love everything, right? And like I said, a lot of those fit in the narrative of the album itself. And the first song is a little rough on because it took me a minute to get used to Phil's voice. Like I said, I'd only ever heard Real Death. Once I got used to it, I didn't notice it at all. I was just focused on what he was singing about. Fantastic songwriting throughout, no matter what style, musical style or genre he is in on whatever given album. So I have one honorable mention. I got the Glow Part 2 from the Microphones. And then my faves are going to be Woolly Mammoth's Absence, all the way back in 2004 off that EP. Real Death, of course, Tintin in Tibet, and Belief Part 2. I mean, all these songs, these last 3 songs are so powerful. They're just fantastic. So thank you to Osmond for putting this together. It's quite a task to pull from someone who has so much volume and get it down into a top 10 list. Let me know what your top 10 list is, your favorite songs off of this one, what else I should check out from Phil. And until next time, guys, I will see you.